So, Israel has a massive problem, a problem in the form of an international aid flotilla with ships trying to reach the Gaza Strip. What you're seeing here is one of the almost 50 boats by international activists that are currently trying to break the now nearly 20-year-old sea blockade of Gaza. This is major news because it is now such a large enterprise and it has so many international activists, including members of the European Parliament and members of national parliaments in Europe, including Italy, that this cannot be ignored anymore, and Israel absolutely hates what is going on, and this flotilla is now creating facts on the ground. Let me show you this. They are very near now. The entire organization is very well prepared also online to document every single ship and every single movement that's happening, because of course these activists are expecting violent opposition to their humanitarian mission to Gaza, and every single step will be documented. So you're seeing here first the 47 ships that are on the way, and we have their live updates as well. And you can see that they are already in front of the midway, somewhere between Egypt and on the other side Greece, and they are now approaching Cyprus, although they are headed straight down here to the Gaza Strip. Here you're seeing it. It's this very well done map overall, and you are also seeing on the map here the territorial waters. So territorial waters are under international law considered the property or the sea, the part of the sea that is under the jurisdiction of the adjacent states, and everything else is not. Everything else is the high sea, and the high sea is reserved for everybody to navigate if freely and undisturbedly. And of course, this is something that Israel is already trying to make impossible. There have been attacks on this flotilla in the past couple of days when drones dropped incendiary devices and crashed into these flotilla. There are several reports about this, and Israel is very tight-lipped about it at the moment. Is neither confirming nor denying that it was responsible for this, but it is utterly clear that these are the warnings that more violence is to come should the flotilla not stop. But we are seeing that 42 boats are currently on the way. The goal is to enter here the territorial waters of Palestine, of occupied Palestine, and hence then to make it possible to have a direct connection to this occupied area here. Now, Israel is furious about this. Is especially on social media. We see this at the moment on Twitter, like non-stop, how the different Israeli embassies are posting about this, calling the flotilla all kinds of names, claiming that the flotilla is headed by Hamas terrorist sympathizers or terrorist collaborators, that this is just like the previous time, that this is just a selfie yard, and that this is highly misguided terrorist support. Of course, none of this makes any sense, because the flotilla so far has, according to all and any international observers, only holds humanitarian aid, which is specifically meant to be delivered to the civilian population of Gaza, which is currently being starved to death by Israel. Now, this is a Reuters report here that we're seeing, and we have several contradicting statements, actually, about two ships that have been deployed by Italy and by Spain, military ships, in order to accompany the flotilla. Now, the hope was that both governments, which are under tremendous pressure by their people, who are now doing strikes and large-scale manifestations and protestations, both governments are under huge pressure to make sure that their nationals on their ships will not be attacked. We see that we see that for the case of the Italians, there's more than 40 Italian nationals on the totality of all of these ships, and this is of course a great bravery of all of these people, because they're now under serious danger to be attacked by Israel. I just remind you that the first time that somebody tried to use this tactic of just creating the fact of a humanitarian mission was in 2010, when Turkish ships launched towards the Gaza Strip, and back then Israel boarded the ships and killed 9 activists. 9 people lost their lives back then, and it was a huge scandal, but by now unfortunately forgotten, although we will talk about this in just a second. Now, the flotilla itself is currently again calling for help and for international assistance and for international attention. On Sunday, yesterday, Stefano Bertoldi, the commander of one of the ships, actually posted a quite dramatic plea for help, saying that these these attacks on the flotilla that are ongoing and keep happening every night over, again, I mind you, international waters. The flotilla is not even near the Gaza Strip yet, although it is clear that it is on its way, right? I mean, the flotilla also rejected any kind of so-called negotiation offers by the Israeli government, which said that the flotilla should anchor somewhere else in a port of Israel, and then Israel would guarantee the delivery of the aid goods to the Gaza Strip and distributed there, which is of course fantasy, absolute fantasy. Israel has been pivotal in making sure that no aid actually enters the Gaza Strip. So what Israel is demanding is that these ships unload their goods, give them up, and return, and then Israel will be done with everything and block this humanitarian aid forever. The flotilla activists obviously are not going to do that. They are single-mindedly now trying to establish the precedent that this illegal blockade can be breached, and that a direct connection by the civil society can be created to Gaza, so that we lose this fear of the overwhelming might of the Israeli forces, and gain courage in actually supplying Gaza with the necessities it needs, its civilian population needs to survive. Now, the plea that was issued by Captain Bertoldi actually calls attention to the fact that despite these 2 ships, military ships, navy ships by Spain and Italy, that they cannot be counted on, and probably are meant more as a fig leaf for both Spain and Italy than as a serious protection force. Mr. Bertoldi actually tells us that I have analyzed the international geopolitical situation and the attitude of our governments. Irresponsible, starting with Giorgia Meloni and our Minister of Defense, Crosetto. We will have no defense. We will not be escorted. We hope Spain does what it should and does not behave like Crosetto, who has clearly stated that at best he will collect and assist the wounded. And then we get a little update actually that Spain too confirmed that its presence is neither defensive nor a true escort. The ship that was dispatched by Spain, the Furor, reportedly set sail on the 26th of September. It would act only ex post, providing assistance if Israel were to attack the global flotilla or violently block its landing or presence in waters of Gaza. So it seems that both Italy and Spain will not be counted on to actually defend the flotilla from attacks, but that they are more or less rescue ships, that once Israel starts sinking the flotilla ships, that the people who do not immediately die can be rescued out of the high sea or in front of the Gaza coast. And if this is true, then of course it is it is not a protection. It is barely a attempt at saving the lives of the crew as far as possible, but definitely not what you would expect that a Navy ship does to prevent attacks against its nationals. So Captain Bertoldi tells us that what they need is attention, and that he very explicitly rejects to trust in his own government, the Italian government. Let's not trust our governments. They will do nothing for us. The captain also tells us what this entire flotilla is about. Remember, is what he says. Ours is not a humanitarian mission to deliver a few packages to the Palestinian population of Gaza. Ours is a political mission. The siege must end, the genocide must end, and above all, the lives of unarmed pacifist activists must be protected. So this is it, this is Europe's and North Africa's, and actually the global civil society's approach at forcing a showdown, a almost literal head-to-head with the Israeli occupation force of Palestine to make the point that no, the globe is not silent, and even though governments are complicit in the genocide, the populations are not, and are actually trying to do something about it. Now, again, this ended very badly for 9 brave activists back in 2010 who had to pay the highest price for this. And I just want to show you one thing, because the current narrative, especially in mainstream media, is again highly misleading. The Reuters article that I showed you before with the flotilla picture ends. The article ends with a short disclaimer, right? What this is all about. Just read this for a second. Israel began its Gaza offensive after the October 7, 2023 Hamas-led attack on Israel, in which some 1,200 people were killed and 251 taken as hostages back to Gaza. The offensive has killed over 65,000 people in Gaza, its health authorities say. If you haven't followed the entire drama about the siege of Gaza and the illegal blockade, you might be forgiven for thinking that, the blockade was initiated after October 7th, right? As part of Israel's legitimate right of self-defense, right? Because Israel is constantly under threat and under attack for no good reason other than everybody hates Israel, right? Everybody's an anti-Semite. Israel has never, ever done any harm to others. It's always terrorists that, for no good reason, just want to harm Israel, right? That's of course, the narrative that Israel keeps portraying, and you would be forgiven to think that the sea blockade, is really only 2 years old, but it is not. The sea blockade is now 18 years old. It started in 2007, and the incident of 2010 has actually been the subject of very thorough international law analysis and fact-finding mission. If we go to the homepage of the ICRC, the International Committee for the Red Cross, which is, one of the guardians and custodians of basically international humanitarian law, and very chiefly responsible for the interpretation of international humanitarian law, we find that the opinions, the legal opinions on what happened in 2010 are very clear. Back then, too, ships tried to bring 10,000 tons of humanitarian aid. The ships were raided, the aid was seized, 9 people were left dead of the activists. The Human Rights Council, actually, the UN Human Rights Council, then asked for a fact-finding mission, and the report of this fact-finding mission is one of the important sources now for evaluating the legality of what happened, because Israel keeps claiming that its blockade is legal under international law, and hence anyone who tries to run the blockade or to oppose it is acting against international law and can by Israel legally be repelled, because its blockade is totally fine, of course. Now, this has been studied, and this commission of the UN Human Rights Council found that it's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. There is, under international law, the possibility to block enemy ports blockade. This is a very old rule of international law. It's part of the law of war. And again, the law of war today has been renamed into international humanitarian law. And I must tell you, the law of war, international humanitarian law, does not differentiate between aggressor and victim, right? That's just not it's just not a distinction that this part of international law makes. This part of the law starts kicking in once international armed conflict, a war, is a matter of fact. Once we have these groups shooting at each other and killing each other, this is the body of international law that comes into effect. This, never mind who started it, right? So while Israel does have an argument in saying that it's just using its right under international law to effect blockade, international humanitarian law also has stringent constraints on what kind of blockade this can be and when blockades are in fact illegal. So a blockade, let me just read to you from the report, the Human Rights Council report, a blockade must satisfy a number of legal requirements, including notification, effective and impartial enforcement, and proportionality. A blockade is illegal if it has the sole purpose of starving the civilian population or denying it other objects essential for its survival, or the damage of the civilian population is or may be expected to be excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated from the blockade. A blockade may not continue to be enforced where it inflicts disproportionate damage on the civilian population. Further down, we then read that the mission is satisfied that the blockade was inflicting disproportionate damage upon the civilian population in the Gaza Strip, and that as such, the interception could not be justified and therefore has to be considered illegal. And I just need to point out here that this is a finding from 2010. In 2010, the Human Rights Council found that the blockade back then of the strip was illegal because it created too much hardship on the population, even back then in 2010. Now just think for a second how much worse the situation is for the civilian population in Gaza now in 2025. Again, this is the finding from 2010. The finding of the Human Rights Council is that this blockade is illegal because it creates disproportionately a lot of suffering, and it has to be regarded as a collective punishment, which is also an illegal act. The fact-finding mission then says that therefore the mission is satisfied not only that the flotilla presented no imminent threat, but that the interception was motivated by concerns about the possible propaganda victory that might be claimed by the organizers of the flotilla. It is clear that there was no reasonable suspicion that the flotilla posed any military risk of itself. As a result, no case could be made for intercepting the vessel in the exercise of belligerent rights or Article 51 of the UN Charter on self-defense. Thus, no case can be made for the legality of the interception, and the mission therefore finds that the interception was illegal. So, if we go a little bit further down, the last part I want to read to you from the conclusion is that the conduct of the Israeli military and other personnel towards the flotilla passengers was not only disproportionate to the occasion, but demonstrated levels of total unnecessary and incredible violence. It betrayed an unacceptable level of brutality. Such conduct cannot be justified or condoned on security or any other grounds. It constituted a grave violation of human rights law and international humanitarian law. So, just again, to make this clear, already in 2010, we have findings from UN bodies and international lawyers from all over the place that the siege of Gaza and the blockade of Gaza, the sea blockade, is illegal. And when Israel claims that it has the right to block off all and any ships from this strip of land, then that's just nonsense. If Israel claims that these are its territorial waters, that's also nonsense. If these ships go straight over here into the territorial waters of Palestine, of Gaza, then these ships are in no violation whatsoever with any kind of international law, and the blockade of the Gaza Strip has already in 2010 been declared by human rights bodies of the United Nations as an illegal as an illegal blockade. So doing something about it and trying to go in there is not in any way, shape, or form a breach of the rights of Israel. Israel has no right in the first place to impose such a horrible blockade. And even if it did, I also must make this clear, even if you do impose a legal blockade under international law, that does not mean that other ships must follow you. It simply gives you the right to stop them. That's all it does. It doesn't give you the right to sink them. It doesn't give you the right to attack them. It gives you the right at maximum to board them and stop them from going there. That's the maximum it does. If Israel now starts attacking these ships with lethal and non-lethal force, and especially if it does so in international waters, then that's piracy and actually partially an act of war against peaceful shipping. It is no different, really no different from what the Houthis have been doing in their attempt at stopping civilian shipping to Israel. It's exactly the same thing. It is not allowed under international law to attack ships in open waters, and that's what Israel now, of course, tries to do. And it tries to establish the precedent that this is fine, right? Because Israel has been acting in utter without any consequences, right? So this is the problem, that if you never ever face any kind of serious backlash and you never face consequences from constant breaches of international law, from constant breaches of even the most basic and fundamental norms of how states interact. If you constantly act in impunity, then you will go further and further. And we have seen Israel doing this time and again, lately again with attacking Qatar in order to blow up a couple of people there that Israel claims are terrorists, but that are on Qatari soil and hence under, you cannot just start blowing up people in other countries. I mean, do you remember how outraged the Europeans were when there was talk about Russia assassinating former agents in the UK, the Skripals, right? And the poisoning of what is it, Salisbury, I think, poisoning people in the UK, and how this is an unthinkable act of blatant violation of international norms. Now, when it comes to Israel, all of these same governments, they just pretend that, this is unfortunate for Qatar, but that's just what it is. This is the impunity, the utter sheer impunity with which Israel is acting at the moment. And the question to us is whether the international pressure now on Israel, not on Israel, sorry, on our respective governments in Europe, is enough to actually move them to select, no, we now need to protect this flotilla. So these two Navy ships from the Italians and the Spanish, of course, raised hopes that finally the pressure is high enough for governments to do the bare minimum, which would be to stop all interactions with Israel, stop all the weapon deliveries, especially from Germany, stop all the trade with Israel, and then also protect the people who try to actually deliver humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. It seems to me at the moment, especially after reading the comments from the flotilla, that again this is more of a fig leaf than an actual support that would really also protect the flotilla. And of course, when it comes to the actual diplomacy on the ground, the whole question is whether the Italian and the Spanish government will make it clear to Israel that they task their navies with protecting the flotilla or not. If it is understood that these ships are on standby to save whoever they can after Israel has attacked and will be allowed to attack, then what Israel will learn is that, okay, fine, then we will just attack even harder because, well, the rescue ships are already there, right? And this is, of course, a very real danger that also all of the people on this, the very brave people on this flotilla, are running, right? This is a head-on. This is the flotilla. The people on these boats, make no mistakes, are daring Israel to shoot them down, are daring Israel and telling them that, so you have to choose between two things. Either let us reach Gaza and distribute this aid and establish the precedent that your blockade can be lifted, or you have to kill Europeans, Americans, African citizens, Asians, who are like citizens of this globe that are on these boats, and hence you will force their governments to react. It is a very, very bold approach, and one that really now puts a very heavy dilemma for Israel, but one which will and might come at the cost of many lives of the brave people on the flotilla. Good luck to everybody on there. Godspeed.